Initiative Africa. My name is Asha. Welcome to this new edition of your weekly magazine featuring Africa on the move through smart innovations and initiatives that work. Let's get on with the show with our top stories today. We met Olivier Bruyeron. He is the president of Coordination Sud, the platform that brings together NGOs under French law. This field specialist trained in development engineering in Madagascar, and he's definitely not short of ideas for improving the scale and effectiveness of aid. He's our guest this week.
Nos sociétés ont besoin pour être stables.
Our societies need a strong and organised civil society to be stable, to achieve harmonious development.
Et organisé.
Development also involves mayors and regional presidents. Partnerships between local communities around the world are gaining ground.
We only look at solutions that can be adapted to our particular context. That means education, health and even transport.
We head for Senegal, where the association Korsa makes girls' education rhyme with maternal and child health.
There are many young girls who drop out of school. I did not want to be like them. I thought that I had to set a good example for my village, for young people, young girls. So here I am.
The development of municipalities and regions is often a headache for mayors and presidents of regional councils in Africa. How to deal with the multiple and pressing needs of fellow citizens when communities lack technicians and resources. In most countries, twinning cooperation is becoming a real solution and an alternative development path. Take a look. Ties between cities in the southern and northern hemispheres began to develop in the aftermath of the Second World War. Now the movement includes cooperation between nations. The goal was to bring people closer together and encourage solidarity and mutual understanding. The international meetings by local authorities are representative of this phenomenon, which has grown today, as well as cooperation between states. 5 years ago, nearly 5,000 French and African communities were already engaged in this venture. 13,000 projects had been implemented for a budget of 57 million euros.
Quasiment toutes les semaines, je vois passer des invitations adressées par les communes du Nord.
Hardly a week goes by without me seeing invitations from communes in France addressed to their counterparts in Cameroon.
Naturellement pour échanger. Naturellement pour également bénéficier.
They want to share, to exchange ideas, to benefit from the expertise and experience of the North in social and socio-economic fields.
Secteur de la vie sociale, socio-économique. Et je pense que de plus en plus, ils en tirent le meilleur parti possible. Et nous souhaitons effectivement que
I think more and more of them are benefiting from these exchanges.
Entre les villes du Sud et du Nord puissent aller de l'avant.
In the Sahel alone, Cité Unie France, a French association that brings together French local authorities involved in international action, now has more than 450 partnerships, initiatives that develop relations between countries and also highly enrich the cities in the north.
Le Congo apporte sa culture. Le Congo apporte son
Congo brings its culture, its artistic know-how.
Des arts. Aujourd'hui, il y a des échanges qui se font dans ce sens-là.
That's the way exchanges are going nowadays. There are several initiatives that promote diversity, encourage tolerance and citizenship.
À la mixité, qui appelle à la tolérance, à la citoyenneté, parce qu'il faut savoir que la diaspora congolaise est assez grande.
The Congolese diaspora is sizable, and we live better together when cultures blend, so people can find their place.
Effectivement, que les deux cultures puissent se mélanger pour que les gens.
After all, we are citizens of the whole world.
Trouver leur place, parce que finalement, on est des citoyens du monde.
But decentralized cooperation doesn't stop with infrastructure and cultural exchanges. The youngest of communes can learn about local government, questions of sanitation, youth and female employment, the do's and don'ts of cultural animation and even urban planning of park areas.
Nous prenons ce qui peut être adapté
We only look at solutions that can be adapted to our particular context. That means education, health, and even transport. Transport is a major challenge in our bigger cities in Africa, so we're looking for ideas.
These exchanges could be undermined by the insecurity linked to the conflicts tearing the continent apart, as well as by growing climate instability. Next October, on the sidelines of the France-Africa Summit, the Cité Uni-France Association will hold a conference on Franco-African decentralized cooperation. On the program, youth entrepreneurship and the solidarity of post-COVID fund donors.
Our guest this week is Olivier Bruyeron, a brilliant development specialist. Coordination Sud, the platform of which he is the president, is a place of advocacy but also for training and exchange of good practices for 176 associations under French law specialized in development. He explained to Laurent Soustras and Thierry Schiller how these NGOs operate today.
Hello, Olivier Bruyeron. You are the president of Coordination Sud, the national coordination body for French development-related NGOs. How many NGOs are we talking about exactly, and what do they do?
Coordination Sud currently brings together 176 organizations, which are associations governed by French law. These organizations represent 20,000 employees, 1/3 in France and 2/3 in their countries of operation, 200,000 volunteers altogether, and around 1.9 million donors.
When we talk about French NGOs and development, what are we talking about in concrete terms?
When
I say French NGO, I would like to point out that many of them today are internationalized and therefore have many local employees within their workforce.
The
NGO sector under French law is historically built upon three major dynamics or modes of action. The first is based upon humanitarian issues, such as an emergency response to save lives threatened by such and such a crisis. A second sector, which corresponds to other methods of intervention, or rather what is called the development sector, which addresses the causes of poverty and inequality and seeks to build sustainable answers to these issues by supporting local actions. And third, let's call them the big advocacy NGOs. Many organizations work in what is called project mode, meaning that they have specific subjects. They work in certain places with partners to carry out projects of a given duration. They can deal with issues such as access to drinking water, health, education, agricultural development. Also, many focus on city access to services in neighborhoods that are marginalized in big cities, for example. As you can see, the fields of intervention of NGOs governed by French law are extremely diverse, and they respond and adapt to local needs and priorities.
What is the relationship between French NGOs and local NGOs, especially in Africa?
La plupart des ONG françaises travaillent en partenariat avec les ONG.
Most French NGOs work in partnership with local, national NGOs.
Les ONG de droit français voient de plus en plus.
I think that NGOs governed by French law see more and more the added value of working with local NGOs and appreciate and take into consideration the capacities and the skills of these local actors.
Et les compétences de ces acteurs locaux. Je tiens à signaler que c'est une dynamique.
I would like to point out that it is a dynamic which, in my opinion, is advancing, and indeed exchanges and partnerships are made that are, I think, increasingly close and more on equal terms. With, be that as it may, it must be acknowledged, today's management rules that adversely affect these equal partnership dynamics.
Assez dynamique, partenariale, sur un pied d'égalité. Il y a de très fortes contraintes de gestion.
There are very strong management constraints and very high risks taken by the bodies that sign the financing contracts. It is essential that the funding partners take into account these constraints and that they impose upon us and ease up on some of them.
Et il faut savoir que Coordination Sud porte dans son plaidoyer.
And I would like to point out that Coordination Sud advocates for further reinforcing and developing of funding that can be contracted directly by local and national NGOs to develop their own initiatives, whether in partnership with French NGOs, if necessary, or not.
En partenariat avec des ONG de droit français ou pas, développer leurs propres initiatives. Nous, ce que nous préconisons, c'est que ça se fasse.
We recommend that this is done via a funding instrument that is different from those that finance our activities today, both so as not to harm the partnership dynamics that exists between us and to allow a funding instrument where these administrative management constraints are adapted for local initiatives.
Adaptés aux initiatives locales.
How did COVID impact the work of French NGOs in Africa?
Alors, bon, comme partout,
Well, as has been the case everywhere, COVID-19 has disrupted our activities. In most cases, we have been able to maintain our on-site facilities and therefore our operational capacities.
Nos capacités opérationnelles. Je dois dire aussi que partout où ça a été possible,
But I must also say that whenever it was possible, companies and civil society organizations, CSOs, have been highly responsive and very adaptable, and they have acted in support of the most vulnerable and those most affected by the crisis, whether it's with food aid or awareness raising about the pandemic and preventative measures.
La pandémie et les gestes barrières. Elles ont aussi agi.
They also took action to support the health system in coordination with local actors. Of course, with CSOs, but also with local public authorities and special health facilities.
Were you surprised by the slow vaccination rate in Africa, even though NGOs were fighting to continue providing services? Were these obstacles predictable and manageable?
Alors, voilà, surpris, pas tout à fait.
Well, I'm not entirely surprised. It was a fear that we expressed at the start of the pandemic and as soon as the vaccine option appeared.
Et nous ne pouvons que déplorer le fait que,
and we can only deplore the fact that indeed still very little has been done in terms of vaccination in most African countries.
Très peu réalisé. Nous, par rapport à cette situation,
In relation to this situation, we are in favor of local vaccine production, and therefore we support the recent French or American positions on the lifting of patents for vaccines.
Françaises ou américaines récentes pour la levée
effectively allowing for local mass production of vaccines. We are aware there is also a need to support all logistical matters so that the vaccination effort is effective.
De façon à ce que la vaccination soit effective. Mais effectivement, il y a
But indeed, there is an urgent need for this vaccination to be fully deployed in Africa.
Pleinement en Afrique.
Welcome back to the second part of our show. 470 kilometers east of Dakar, the Senegalese capital, the NGO Le Korsa, a Franco-American association, has undertaken economic, cultural and social actions to contribute to the development of the Tambacounda region. Its work in favor of the education of young girls has allowed about 15 of them to take the baccalaureate exams each year, but also to pursue higher studies. A success that the association has continued in the health sector by building a maternity unit and a pediatric clinic that has officially opened its doors in May 2021. Take a look.
This is the Tambacounda home for children and youth, which looks after girls from nearby villages. It's a place where the youngsters can enjoy a safe environment and also an education, all under the supervision of the director, Maimouna Kassau. The aim is to offer them an alternative future to a forced or early marriage.
This year we have 140 girls from the 4 departments of the region. The most distant villages have been selected on the basis of different criteria: seniority, the number of years at our home, social criterion, the level of vulnerability, and also the geographic aspect, being from a village in the Tambacounda region.
There are at least 15 girls in the baccalaureate class this year. Most want to go to university. The Sheikh Anta Diop University in Dakar is a popular choice.
In Missirah, my village, there are many young girls who drop out of school. I did not want to be like them. I thought that I had to set a good example for my village, for young people, young girls. So here I am.
In this home, the number of students who pass the baccalaureate is higher than the national average. Often they are the first in their families to have the chance to study at university. It is in this mindset that the Franco-American NGO La Korsa was set up in 2005. Korsa works directly with doctors, teachers and students, while also actively supporting farmers and their families.
Ce que l'organisation La Korsa fait pour soutenir ces filles, c'est de prendre.
And what our NGO does is really to support these girls 100% with their schooling and education in Tambacounda.
Mais également tout ce qui est lié à, par exemple, à leurs études à Tambacounda.
With an annual budget of 70 million CFA francs.
At the moment, we are doing an extension of the Tambacounda hospital. This is our main project. We also opened a school in the village of Fas. We're working on agriculture in Saint-Tian. In Fas, we work with other schools to buy supplies for students, and we're working with the Minister of Health to see if there are any projects where we could help.
The new building covers an area of 1,800 square meters and includes sanitary facilities. It's a project designed and coordinated by the Korsa NGO. The somewhat particular aspect of this project is that it's an ecological building. We use less energy for air conditioning since we use natural ventilation. We played a little with the length to allow air to circulate naturally within the building and to cool down with the ventilation bricks, and also the two roofs, which allow to slightly isolate the heat. The maternity and pediatric clinic opened in May 2021 and is already improving the well-being of mothers and their newborn. It should also help extend life expectancy of children in the remote region of Tambacounda, a stated aim of the Franco-American Korsa NGO.
Let's now get back to Olivier Bruyeron for the final part of our interview of the week. He tells us about his objectives for his mandate as president of Coordination Sud. Let's listen to him. Olivier Bruyeron, you are the president of Coordination Sud, which coordinates French development NGOs. What impact is the health crisis likely to have on French and European development aid? This is something that everyone wants to know right now.
Bon, il n'est pas évidemment simple de répondre à cette question dans la mesure où il a une projection.
Well, it is obviously not easy to answer this question, as it's about the future, based on people's points of views, which is never a sure thing. Nevertheless, I think that today we must distinguish between the European level and the French level. At the European level, this crisis occurred when the 2021-2027 European budget was under discussion. Technically, it's called the Multi-Annual Financial Framework. Unfortunately, this budget ended up being based on unambitious commitments, which were not that different from the previous 7-year Multi-Annual Financial Framework. Also not very ambitious.
Qui couvrait la période les 7 années précédentes, mais assez peu ambitieux. Aucun moyen additionnel pour l'aide publique.
No additional means for official development assistance was planned, so that right there was a very poor response. There is not a decrease in resources from the European Union, but there is no significant mobilization of resources either.
En France, la situation est un petit peu différente.
In France, the situation is a little different. In 2020, French development aid increased compared to what was made available in previous years. Therefore, there is rather a development aid growth trend. So, of course, we at Coordination Sud are careful, but also demanding. Careful to ensure that this growth is effective and maintained, but also demanding about France reaching, as of 2025 and for the following years, a significant mobilization of its gross national income in favor of public development aid, namely 0.7% of its national gross income.
What does your NGO field experience bring to your current position? I think that experience was in Madagascar.
Alors tout à fait. Donc moi je suis engagé dans le domaine de la...
Oh yes, indeed. I have been involved in international cooperation for 25 years, engaged in very concrete projects in the field.
Très concret sur le terrain. Alors effectivement, en ayant été en poste à Madagascar, mais aussi...
Having been stationed in Madagascar, but also for 20 years or so, following projects being carried out in different countries in Africa, in West Africa in particular.
En Afrique de l'Ouest notamment, en Asie...
in Asia, the Indian Ocean, Haiti.
Et donc, je pense que déjà cette expérience de terrain, elle m'a permis, d'apprendre, d'ouvrir les yeux sur des réalités.
I think that this field experience has allowed me to learn to open my eyes to reality and to the ways of making changes and improving local situations.
D'améliorer des situations locales. Il y a beaucoup d'innovations qui, ces dernières années ou ces dernières décennies,
There are many innovations that have emerged in recent years or decades thanks to non-governmental organizations, and it's still the case today.
C'est vrai dans le domaine de l'eau, c'est vrai dans le domaine de l'agroécologie, dans le domaine donc,
This is true in the fields of water, of agroecology, of agricultural development. It is NGOs that have brought these issues forward so that they are finally starting to be a part of national or international policies and visions. But it is also NGOs that, from my point of view, have experienced the ability to deliver quality services to people who nevertheless have little financial means, and they continue to do so.
Qui pourtant ont peu de moyens financiers. Je crois qu'il y a énormément de solutions.
I believe that there are many solutions that will arise and be implemented, and that is also what I wish to support and bring forth within the framework of my mandate.
Dans le cadre de mon mandat.
What other agenda item is particularly important to you for your mandate at Coordination Sud?
Alors, beaucoup de travail a été fait, mais je pense que...
A lot of work has been done, but I think there is a constant need to recognize the role of civil society organizations and their capacity for action.
Le rôle et les capacités d'action des organisations de la société civile.
This is true in France and in many countries.
Beaucoup de pays. Nos sociétés ont besoin, pour être stables,
Our societies need a strong and organized civil society to be stable, to achieve harmonious development. Our organizations contribute to this.
Et aujourd'hui, ce rôle-là, il est finalement assez peu soutenu.
But ultimately, there is very little support and funding for this role today from France, in any case, which, when compared to the OECD framework countries, provides little support and channels its aid only relatively marginally through NGOs.
Marginalement son aide par les ONG.
Another crisis is looming in Africa now. The World Food Programme and several other organizations have recently sounded the alarm on the food insecurity situation heightened by both the COVID crisis and climate change. This is a subject of which you're well aware of. What sustainable solution would you recommend to deal with this recurring problem that has been going on for years?
Alors, naturellement, il n'y a pas de solution simple.
Well, naturally, there is no simple solution, and I heard the call and the warning of the director of the World Food Programme in December, who I believe said that we are at the dawn of a hunger pandemic.
Pandémie de la faim. Une première direction, bien sûr, c'est de répondre aux besoins immédiats.
A first step, of course, is to respond to the immediate needs of those who are suffering from hunger, and therefore to act quickly for these people with the help of food aid programs and so on.
Ces personnes-là, à travers des programmes d'aide alimentaire, etc. C'est aussi, je crois, de travailler un peu plus.
It's also, I believe, about working a bit more over time to develop and prevent malnutrition-related problems. I am referring in particular to young children and women of childbearing age. Of course, in addition, it is also necessary to encourage the evolution and transformation of the agricultural sector by relying first on agroecology, on short food supply chains, on the farmers, the intermediaries, all the actors in the agricultural chain that are closest to the land.
Toute la filière, tous les acteurs de la filière au plus proche de chaque territoire. Et enfin, troisième dimension, ce qu'on a vu aussi à travers la crise.
And finally, the third aspect, which we also witnessed with the crisis, is that there is, from my point of view anyway, a very important need for the development of social security. And here, I think, there is a whole field in which it is worth rapidly investing to allow for social security and protection that will make countries and its people more resilient when it comes to future shocks, because we must recognize that there will be future shocks in the coming years. We know this to be true. Now, whether it will be climate issues, maybe it could be other health crises or something else, we don't know. And therefore, we must develop the capacity for resilience for the people.
Construire cette capacité de résilience en faveur des populations.
Olivier Bruyeron, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that's it. Initiative Africa is over for today. You can, of course, find Olivier Bruyeron interview and the replay of our programs on our website, africaonair.com. And, of course, you can also find us on all our social media channels. Feel free to share, like, and comment with the hashtag Initiative Africa TV show. And don't forget, next week, same time, same channel, I will see you again with a new edition of Business Africa. Have a great week and goodbye.